with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, a defense pact, a strategic defense agreement. For those of you who don't know, a strategic defense agreement means that both countries are obliged to defend each other in a position of war. It considers any attack on one country as an attack against the other country, and it forces the country signatory to this defense pact to participate when there is an attack against the other country. Why is this such a strategically important move? And before, of course, I elaborate here, many people will start telling you, oh, it wasn't for the Palestinians, and what did Pakistan and Saudi Arabia do? I understand all of that, and all of that is valid criticism. However, we're talking about the development itself and what it does on the greater picture, on the greater geopolitical scope, and what it does to the world as well. Saudi Arabia is the main country of the Gulf. Like the establishment, don't like the establishment, separate story. Criticize them for their position against Palestine, totally legit. But the fact that they're going into a strategic pact with Pakistan without even telling anyone, we didn't hear that there was a visit. We weren't expecting that. However, 2 days after the summit came, that was to an extent underwhelming because there were no continuation implementation mechanisms. Saudi Arabia comes and surprises the world with this agreement with Pakistan. Both of them. Both of them. Firstly, why is it so important? Saudi Arabia is the biggest country in the Gulf, and Saudi Arabia, under what is called the Greater Israel Plan, will have the biggest territories. So they would be the biggest victims. Why did Saudi immediately go to Pakistan rather than other countries too? They started to have military drills with Iran. You could have said they could have had with another Arab country, for example. It's because Pakistan is a nuclear power. So Saudi Arabia wanted to say, indirectly, we own, we have nuclear deterrence now. Then the message is very important. Again, with all of the criticism you may have, we're talking about things in a greater geopolitical view. Saudi Arabia going to Pakistan is an Arab country going to a Muslim country. Okay, this is very important here. Why? Because it broke the barrier of a military alliance between Arab and Muslim states. So this would be, or could be at least, and I hope it would be too, because this needs to expand, the beginning of a bigger military pact. The Pakistani defense minister called it a Muslim NATO. I don't like the name NATO. Okay, but if we want to call it a Muslim alliance, whatever it is, that would open the door for other countries to participate. Now, traditionally, if we talk about West Asia, Pakistan lies more to the east, so it's not directly imminently under the fire of Zionism as much as the Arab states. Okay, the fact that they got themselves in the picture is significantly important, is very important. And the fact that we have an Arab and a Muslim country participating in this defense pact opens the doors to what? To more countries participating. Now, things will significantly change, even though there are already changes happening on the ground now, and this has already sent a lot of messages to the countries in charge or countries interested in the matter. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, it has to include Iran, Turkey and Egypt. If we have that and this gets implemented, or if Turkey, Iran and Egypt have a trilateral agreement between them, which is, by the way, also likely because they showed willingness. Turkey is already involving Egypt despite a decade of tensions in their fighter jet program. Egypt already has strategic cooperation room with Turkey, and they also purchased many drones. All of that is doing what? It's showing you that there's a block being created here. That block of between the East and the West. to start really countering the balance. Benjamin Netanyahu, where we're ending the unipolar world. The unipolar world is on its way to completely end, and the creation of a multipolar world is here. Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about the fact that there were no blocks anymore, that Israel wasn't on any block, not even the US block. Hmm? Benjamin Netanyahu knows exactly what he's saying with that sentence. And we can see that formation beginning to happen. And if that formation expands further, and it starts to include countries that are attacked by Israel, it's going to be a game changer. And the biggest message was there to send to Israel, by the way. If there's anyone with an ounce of brain in that establishment, although that's another argument because Netanyahu is acting like supreme leader and is going ahead as a supreme leader in Israel. Netanyahu is the dictator of Judea, you can call him, not the prime minister of Israel. That will send them a message. Well, okay, hold on a second. If I were to attack Saudi Arabia tomorrow, that means I'm attacking Pakistan, which is a nuclear country, with Chinese, Turkish, Russian, North Korean, and American weapons. The Pakistani army is a diversified army. Egypt is trying to get itself up there as well. A diversified army. The friend or foe thing wouldn't work with them. Saying that, oh, they only use American weapons. Saudi Arabia, cut a long story short, because their army is heavily reliant on the United States. But now that the United States allowed Israel to do that and helped Israel attack Qatar, the Gulf states realized that the United States gave them the biggest sword in their backs. And the first country to smack them in the face was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's move with the United States is a smack in the face. And don't tell me, well, Pakistan also deals with the US and Saudi. Yeah, good, but in the greater scheme of things, they deal with other countries too. They have great relations with Russia, they have great relations with China. In one move, Saudi Arabia can replace the whole equipment with China if they so desire. And the Americans were planning to have an expansion of this agreement. Israel also, what are they going to do now? Saudi Arabia is also a backer of the new authorities in Syria. What if something happens there with Israel's continuous attacks with Syria? You see, we stopped having what's called like the resistance bloc, or everything is shifting. There's a reintroduction and there is a new emergence of something bigger. There's no longer like just the resistance axis or the country. Everything is now starting to understand the Israeli threat. And regardless of their approach to that threat, whether it's direct, brave confrontation from the beginning, like we still have from Yemen, for example, or the northern authority of Yemen, Sana'a, basically, or the other movements in countries that attack, like Iran, for example, with the direct confrontation, something else is forming now. And even when we talk about the case of Iran, when did Iran have war with Israel? When Iranian interests were attacked. Iran didn't attack Israel only because Israel started a war in Gaza. So what prevents that being translated in a lower or a higher kind of equation with another country? Because they know that the attack is coming against them anyway. And if the only thing they care about is preserving their status and protecting their country's economies, that's a huge threat. An attack is a huge threat. Tourism, funding, global economies, events, all of that. Saudi Arabia is holding international events, diversifying its economy for the first time. Their GDP is coming higher when it comes to economies apart from oil. They are holding global events. They're making Saudi Arabia a hub. Again, it doesn't matter what your view is on any of that and the authority, whatever it is. I'm telling you how things are. And any attack, any military attack against the country would be problematic. So from their perspective, they wanted to have a deterrence so they don't reach a stage where they get attacked. But what they created is an example for other Arab and Muslim countries that it's time to begin a bigger alliance between Arab and Muslim countries, because no matter what the differences are, the enemy is one and we need to unite to confront it and stop pathetically relying on American protection.
Brother Mahmood, we had a talk last time. So I told you that I thought that the Qatari Amir would be thinking that he's sleeping under the open skies. So that was what NBS was thinking. Actually, he really thought that we are also sleeping under the open skies, and that's where the NATO-styled security agreement comes up. But there's also an Arabic alliance army as well. What army is that? There's a
There's a GCC council, okay, the Gulf countries. They have an alliance between them, okay? They used it under what they call the shield of the Gulf, Dir al-Khalij. But unfortunately, the Arab states only use it against each other. They're quick to implement things against each other. So they implemented it when there was there were protests in Bahrain. They had actions against Qatar, Yemen, all of that. And again, the Arab establishments need to wake up. They really do need to wake up and understand that the big enemy is sitting there. And the American bases that you paid trillions to come and protect you are worthless in the face of the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, as part of the results of the Arab Summit in Qatar, one of the immediate things that the Gulf states said, we need to immediately start activating the Gulf defense thing so that we can have a deterrence force. That would probably include Jordan as well, because the Qatari Emir went and visited Jordan yesterday, clearly to discuss the latest developments and whatever they can do too. So that, though, would not be enough. Why? Because Israel would still know we have the Air Force superiority, you still rely on American support, and we have the American leadership by the you-know-what. We tell them what to do, and they can't go against our demands. Therefore, Saudi Arabia, in a clear strategic move, went directly to Pakistan. And if Pakistan starts to give the Arab and Muslim countries an umbrella, that would be a huge progress, because the Muslims and Arabs would finally have nuclear deterrence. And then, some people would start telling you, oh, and but this government has repressive government and human rights. However, that doesn't mean you agree with all of the countries. Please, some people need to understand how to look at things strategically. That's not an endorsement to any of the countries, and that is not an approval of their wrongdoings, or but we need to understand one thing that has been missing in West Asia, in Arab countries and Muslim countries as well, is the strategic vision to a large extent. Like, even when there was the civil war in Syria and there was Iran helping one side, other countries helping the other side. Even at that time, whenever I used to speak about Syria, I used to say, even when you're fighting, have a strategic vision. The real enemy is Israel. Focus your energies on the real enemy and unite on the greater good and on your greater enemy that wants all of you destroyed. Now, of course, there's a big change in Syria. Iran clearly made a strategic decision not to have any involvement, likewise with Hezbollah as well in Lebanon. in many things that we still don't know to this day, by the way, why they didn't protect the Syrian president and how the Russians were involved. The Turkish role, of course, is obvious by backing the armed opposition at the time. All of that, even during all of that period. And now that that's done, but there are still tensions in Syria, it's clear for everyone who is the side attacking everyone. Again, in a very strategically stupid move for Israel. So they still attack Syria and they still attack Hezbollah, who were previous foes. Okay? What are they sending a message to both of them? I'm your bigger enemy. They attacked Yemen, they attacked Iran, and then they went and attacked the Gulf state. Sending a message to who? To the states that already have a peace treaty with them in the Gulf, that this deal with that country doesn't bring any good. Bahrain just removed its ambassador from Israel. The UAE was the first country to go and show solidarity with Qatar after this attack. So again, all of those disagreements, all of those criticisms, they need to be put aside when you look at things from a strategic perspective. That move that came now from Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is a move to be supported, congratulated, regardless of your view of either Pakistan or the Saudi authorities, by the way. That move needs to be supported. That move needs to be expanded to as many countries as possible in order to have a genuine deterrence and finally also decisive action. Because the thing that we need to see is decisive action. There's a genocide still happening in Gaza. People are still being butchered day after day. Infants, children, 7 newborns died in 1 week. These are not some sort of statistics that we need to be accustomed to. That needs a decisive action. We saw preparation and we're seeing preparation, but that preparation needs to be finalized before the big moment of truth, where there is an inevitable clash, because this is where Israel is leading and heading to.
Trump these days is in the UK. He would be watching this on TV. Saudi Arab signing a defense agreement with Pakistan. What would be going through his mind while watching all this? Would he like back up a little, come closer to
He
the
is his first thing in his mind is going to be a realization that they're losing influence. A big realization that they're losing influence. China, in the 80th commemoration of the ending of World War II, had a very big show and messages to the whole world by the parade, by the arms that they projected, and by the countries who were next to them in that parade. Donald Trump was clearly upset to a level where he had
yeah.
this almost childish post on social media. Oh yeah, don't forget who helped you in World War II, and good luck to them while you're conspiring against us. That is a message of a weak leader who lost control. And do you know why, to a very large extent, that loss of control is coming? Their ongoing greed, their ongoing hostility, their endless wars, them backing Israel 24/7 no matter what, and conducting all of these crimes all across the world. And now they think that these countries can somehow obey them or not have any alternatives or not seek alternatives. Typical arrogance and typical empire approach, neo-colonialist approach. Those days are clearly over. The agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan was a shocking agreement to many people. I would argue, including Trump and Israel as well, because people need to realize one thing here. It's not like the countries that have ties with the United States are listening to everything that the United States wants, or don't have any sort of mobility or flexibility in what they do. Even if we take, for example, Egypt. the president of Egypt, the Sisi, came in a military coup after democratic elections. But even with this coup, even with all of the problems internally, they haven't completely relied on the United States. And the United States, as a matter of fact, threatened them with sanctions if they were to purchase the advanced fighter jets from Russia. That's why they had to go to China, and they are now involved in the Turkish development of the new Khan fighter jets. Because the United States has the act, the sanctions act against Russia, and they said to Egypt, you can buy their fighter jets. And why did Egypt want to buy their fighter jets from the beginning? Because you could think to yourself, well, the United States supports and arms Israel, and they also arm Egypt. It's because what they give to Egypt in equivalent isn't equivalent to what they give to Israel. Israel always has the upper hand, especially with fighter jet capability that has air-to-air capability. They will never give Egypt the upper hand with Israel. That's why they went to Russia before. The United States threatened them. They wanted to keep that balance and not break the ties completely. Quietly went to China, and now they're cooperating with Turkey as well. The Muslim and Arab countries are also realizing that. Of course, again, you can say took you a lot of time to. It was any move towards the right direction is a good move, but these moves, what's the most important thing here is these moves need to be expanded, they need to be implemented on the ground, and they need to be followed up with political moves and political demands that would reflect the intensity of these moves. Otherwise, they wouldn't really be gaining the benefits of having these agreements.
Is Donald Trump gonna move towards pacifying the situation, or is he gonna like just take them head on like he did with India? And by the way, Indian media is buzzing a lot. They are also in complete shock.
They're in complete shock. It shows you that there's a level of flexibility for these countries, like Saudi authorities and Bin Salman. They have ties with Modi as well. Pakistan and India, of course, there have been tensions from before, but it shows you that it came as a surprise for everyone. With Donald Trump, in all honesty, what Donald Trump has been projecting in the past year is weakness. Donald Trump has only been acting like a macho, bringing this businessman mentality to politics, acting arrogant with allies and foes, showing that he doesn't have an ounce of guts when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu. He promised he would stop the war in Ukraine and Russia in one day and the war in Palestine one day. He did not. As a matter of fact, day after day, he comes with more abhorrent statements that are clearly Israeli backed against him. So he isn't really showing anyone that he has a genuine will to do something, or that he is very restricted from the powers that be surrounding him. Some are explaining that as this magical 4 or 5D chess game. I can't see that really. All I can see is a gutted president. A gutted president that doesn't have a lot of authority, who is very much hated for his complicity and support of genocide and a lack of action as he promised his voters to stop this American interference globally. Let's not forget here, why did many people vote for Donald Trump? Although many of them, unfortunately, they didn't realize who Donald Trump was with his first term, and how much Donald Trump fails when it comes to Zionism. It had a lot of alarm bells. But what was Donald Trump doing before? Donald Trump was criticizing the wars of the United States in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was criticizing the war in Ukraine as well. He wanted to end that, according to him. And he was promising everyone that he is going to stop the war in Palestine. But when he came to power, he's passing more money to Israel, to Ukraine, to more wars. He's threatening with more escalations with Venezuela as well. He's backstabbing all of his voters, basically. And it's not really America first, it's Israel first. And also, he isn't taking concrete measures to change the way the United States was in relation to other countries, acting as the police state or changing things around. That is causing Donald Trump a lot of problems internally in American politics. The voters of the United States, the fan base, the MAGA movement in the United States, many of them have already lost faith in Donald Trump. Those of them who are still supporting Donald Trump are waiting for the moment, according to them, that he will all of a sudden take these decisive actions and measures. A man who hasn't taken decisive actions to stop these wars, a man who hasn't taken decisive actions against Israel, which in return severely worsened the situation for the United States and its image, a man who has allowed Israel to attack a Gulf state, therefore breaking any sort of trust. Now no one has faith in the United States. Listen, for please, and I would ask the viewers also one thing. When you talk about politics or read about politics or see some videos instead, you need to understand that what you're seeing is hardly 3% of everything that's happening. So many people will give you this nice image. Many people will pretend like they're doing something and they're not. There's a lot happening in the background. What Trump did with Qatar broke the trust of the Gulf in the United States. That's why there was such a quick move for a defense pact between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And not Saudi Arabia and China, by the way, in a way to also solidify the idea of a multipolar world that doesn't necessarily rely on either China or Russia or the United States. It shouldn't be this way anyway. The world should have equality in terms of power so that more countries can influence the decision making globally, more countries would have a say, and more countries would hopefully work for the benefit of their people rather than be at the mercy of the American led financial systems globally and or face American sanctions if they go one step too far or one step in the wrong direction in the eyes of the United States. So Donald Trump, he really didn't do himself a favor. He didn't follow the promises that he gave his followers, and he's leading the United States to have less influence globally. Because you can't explain that in any other way. The United States is losing influence. It doesn't have the same influence it had before. They're not in the same position. They are proving that they are totally paralyzed in terms of authority against the crimes of Israel. And people are seeing that happening, including, first and foremost, the American population and the supporters of Trump himself.
Talking about keeping promises, Marco Rubio also landed in Qatar after he went to Israel. And they say that they also signed sort of a defense agreement with Qatar again. I don't know what that is all about. So, what did Marco Rubio bring to the table when he came to Qatar?
They didn't talk too much about this agreement that they had with Qatar. The only thing that we saw is so there was no declaration of a renewal, unless I'm mistaken. Like because that was my recent follow-up on that matter. Is the fact that Donald Trump, unless something literally happened after I viewed and read all of this information, Donald Trump immediately after the Benjamin Netanyahu attack against Qatar immediately started to talk about rushing into a new defense agreement with Qatar. You had a lot of statements coming from the American side, less statements coming from the Qatari side. Please bear that in mind. The Qataris said, we feel betrayed. Betrayed by who? Betrayed by the United States. Hence the move, the rushed move of Trump and Rubio immediately going to try and take the heat down and tell them, firstly, it's never going to happen again. And we really didn't know. And we told you immediately as soon as we know, in a way to try and deny any sort of involvement that hardly anyone buys anyway. Israel doesn't move without the knowledge, consent, approval of the United States in the region. The United States has bases and radars all over the region. And even if Israel launched this attack from the Red Sea, as they claim, against Qatar, the United States would still be able to monitor that attack. Let's not be naive. Let's not throw sand in the eyes of the people. So the American side were rushing into all of this move. Should Qatar go ahead with any sort of agreement with the United States that will be a replacement or that will come without alternative measures with other countries, because you can have multiple defense pacts with multiple countries, they would be shooting themselves in the foot and they would be inviting the next Israeli attack against them. If Qatar decides to have an agreement with the United States and simultaneously either join this defense pact between Saudi and Pakistan or have any sort of military defense pact with other nations too, that would rise to the challenge that Israel poses in the region. That would be very problematic for them. If they think that the United States is somehow magically going to change something that would protect them in the future, that would be a strategic disaster for them. Therefore, if they would want to have any sort of agreement with the United States, that has to be followed up with a strategic agreement with another country. And if they don't, they would be inviting, it would only be a matter of time up until Netanyahu attacks them again. Because Netanyahu wasn't just saying about attacking them again. Israel is now, and elements in Israel are clearly talking about assassination attempts in Turkey and in Egypt. Egypt thwarted, they reported that they thwarted an attack against the Palestinian resistance in Cairo several weeks back. They are intensifying the security on the Palestinian resistance in them, likewise with Turkey. Israel is more bothered by Turkey because Turkey allows the Palestinian resistance freedom of operation, by the way, more so than Egypt. Egypt allows their presence there, and which also Israel doesn't like that anyway. But what that means is both countries are also on the hit list. And that's why we're seeing these rushed moves, military moves by Egypt and by Turkey before that happens. And Qatar should at least have something with both Turkey and Egypt, who both told Qatar that we have everything at your disposal already. But they need to have something more solid than that. So I think the whole region understands where the threat is coming from. Both Turkey and Egypt have recently been making moves. Egypt in Sinai, reducing almost to a minimum any sort of security, almost eliminating security coordination with Israel and the mediators in Sinai, which totally wipes off the Camp David Accords. Chinese air defense systems, over 40,000 troops, more than 100,000 were deployed way before, tanks, everything on the Israeli borders without notifying the Israeli side. And Turkey again, ballistic missiles, air defense systems, preparing bunkers. All of these moves are showing that the preparations are still ongoing to that moment. In relation to Qatar, though, if they only limit that to the United States, it would be a huge mistake for them.